The telegram arrived on a Tuesday morning, and Beatrice Gardner knew her life was over before she even opened it. She stood in the dusty main street of Deeming, New Mexico, her fingers trembling as she broke the wax seal, already dreading what words her father had penned from Boston. The September heat of 1883 beat down mercilessly, but the cold dread spreading through her chest made her shiver despite the warmth. "Miss Gardner, you all right?" The voice belonged to the telegraph operator, a thin man with wire-rimmed spectacles who had handed her the message moments before. She could not answer. Her eyes scanned the words once, twice, 3 times, hoping somehow they would change. They did not. Her father, in his precise, unforgiving handwriting transcribed by the operator, informed her that he had arranged a marriage. The groom was Cornelius Whitmore, a wealthy industrialist twice her age whom she had never met. The wedding would take place 1 week from Saturday. She was to prepare herself and await further instructions. Her presence in New Mexico, where she had been teaching at the small schoolhouse for the past year, was no longer required nor desired. Beatrice walked back toward her boarding house in a daze, the paper crumpling in her fist. She had come west to escape Boston society, to find purpose beyond parlor conversations and needlepoint. Teaching children their letters and numbers had given her something she had never experienced in her 22 years: freedom. Now her father was snatching it away, and she had no power to stop him. A daughter did not refuse her father. A woman did not determine her own future. These were the rules she had been taught since birth. The boarding house was quiet when she entered. Mrs. Chen, the proprietor, was out at the market. Beatrice climbed the narrow stairs to her small room and sat on the edge of her bed, staring at nothing. 1 week. In 1 week, she would be expected to marry a stranger and return to a life of captivity dressed in silk and propriety. She could not do it. The realization came to her slowly, like dawn breaking over the desert. She simply could not do it. But what choice did she have? Women did not run away. Women did not defy their fathers. Women certainly did not disappear into the wild New Mexico territory with no money, no protection, and no plan. Yet the thought, once planted, would not leave her mind. That evening she attended the town dance at the community hall, a weekly gathering where ranchers and townspeople came together for music and socializing. She had not wanted to go, but staying alone with her thoughts seemed worse. The hall was crowded, lanterns casting warm light over the wooden floorboards as a fiddle player and guitarist performed a lively tune. Beatrice stood near the refreshment table, nursing a cup of weak punch, when she noticed him watching her. He was tall, perhaps 6 feet, with sun-darkened skin and dark hair that curled slightly at his collar. His eyes were an unusual shade of gray-green, like sage in morning light. He wore the typical attire of a working cowboy: worn denim, a dusty hat he had removed upon entering, and boots that had seen countless miles. There was something in the way he looked at her, a directness that was neither rude nor forward, just honest. He crossed the room toward her, moving with the easy confidence of a man comfortable in his own skin. "Madam, I am Carter Zander. I work the Triple Bar Ranch about 15 miles north of town. I have seen you around teaching the children. I wanted to introduce myself properly." His voice was deep and warm, with a slight drawl that suggested Texas origins. Beatrice found herself responding before she thought better of it. "Beatrice Gardner. I teach at the schoolhouse, yes. Would you care to dance, Miss Gardner?" She should have declined. She should have made her excuses and returned to her room. Instead, she set down her cup and took his offered hand. His palm was calloused from hard work, his grip gentle but certain. He led her onto the floor as the musicians began a slower waltz. Carter Zander was a skilled dancer, guiding her smoothly through the turns. They did not speak at first, but Beatrice found the silence comfortable rather than awkward. There was something solid about him, something real. In Boston, the men she had known were all performance, carefully constructed personas designed to impress. This cowboy seemed to have no false layers, no pretense. "You seem troubled, if you do not mind me saying," he said quietly as they moved across the floor. "I do not mean to intrude, but I have noticed you look like someone carrying a heavy burden." Beatrice looked up at him, surprised by his perceptiveness. Most people saw what they expected to see, a proper Eastern lady playing at frontier life. Carter seemed to see deeper. "Is it so obvious?" "Maybe only to someone who is paying attention." The song ended, but he did not release her hand immediately. They stood there in the middle of the crowded hall, and Beatrice felt something shift inside her chest, a crack in the careful walls she had built around herself. Before she could stop herself, before she could think about propriety or wisdom, she whispered, "I need to disappear." His expression did not change, but his hand tightened slightly on hers. "Let us walk outside, Miss Gardner. Too many ears in here." They stepped out into the cool night air. The desert temperature dropped significantly after sunset, and Beatrice wrapped her shawl tighter around her shoulders. Carter led her away from the hall, toward a quiet spot near the water trough where they could speak privately. "Tell me what is happening," he said simply. And she did. The words poured out of her, the telegram, the arranged marriage, her father's ultimatum, her year of freedom that was about to end. She told him about Cornelius Whitmore, a man she had never met but whose reputation she knew. He was known for his business ruthlessness, his cold demeanor, his previous wife who had died under mysterious circumstances that society chose not to examine too closely. Carter listened without interrupting, his face grave in the moonlight. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "When do they expect you back in Boston?" "The wedding is scheduled for 1 week from Saturday. I received instructions to take the train east by Friday at the latest. And if you do not show up, my father will come looking for me, or he will send someone. He is not a man who tolerates disobedience." Carter looked out at the dark desert, thinking. When he turned back to her, there was determination in his eyes. "I can help you disappear, Miss Gardner. I know this territory well. There are places a person can go where they will not be found, not unless they want to be. But I need you to understand what you would be choosing. It would not be easy. It would mean leaving everything behind, truly leaving. Are you prepared for that?" Beatrice thought about Boston, about her father's cold house, about the life of suffocating propriety that awaited her. She thought about Cornelius Whitmore and whatever fate would befall her as his wife. Then she thought about the past year, teaching children, watching sunsets over the desert, feeling alive for the first time in her existence. "Yes," she said firmly. "I am prepared." Carter nodded slowly. "Then we do not have much time. They will be watching for you to leave on the train. We need to move before then, before they expect it. Can you be ready to leave by tomorrow night?" "Tomorrow?" Her heart raced. "So soon?" "The sooner we leave, the better chance we have. Once your father realizes you are not coming, he will wire the law. They will start searching. We need to be long gone by then, somewhere they cannot track us." Beatrice took a deep breath. Tomorrow night. It gave her barely 24 hours to prepare to say goodbye to the life she knew, but Carter was right. Waiting would only increase the danger. "What should I bring?" "Only what you can carry easily. Practical clothing, nothing fancy, any money you have. Leave everything else. The more you take, the more suspicious it will look if anyone notices." They made plans quickly, speaking in low voices. Carter would bring horses and supplies. Beatrice would slip out of the boarding house after dark, when Mrs. Chen was asleep. They would ride north initially, then cut west into the mountains. Carter knew a route through terrain rough enough to discourage pursuit, leading to a small settlement where they could rest and plan their next move. "Why are you helping me?" Beatrice asked suddenly. "You do not know me. This could bring you trouble." Carter met her eyes steadily. "I watched my own mother forced into a marriage that killed her spirit long before it killed her body. I will not stand by and watch the same happen to another woman, not when I can do something to prevent it. Besides, Miss Gardner, sometimes you know things about a person without needing years of acquaintance. I look at you and I see someone who deserves better than what fate is handing her." Something warm blossomed in Beatrice's chest, something she had no name for. "Thank you, Mr. Xander, truly. Call me Carter. If we are going to ride off into the wilderness together, formality seems unnecessary. Then you must call me Beatrice." He smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his serious face. "Beatrice, that is a beautiful name. It suits you." They returned to the dance separately to avoid suspicion. Beatrice forced herself to socialize normally, to give no indication that anything had changed. Inside, her heart hammered with fear and excitement in equal measure. She was really going to do this. She was going to run. The next day passed with agonizing slowness. Beatrice taught her classes as usual, trying to memorize each child's face, knowing she would likely never see them again. She told Mrs. Chen she was feeling unwell and would take supper in her room. The landlady clucked sympathetically and brought her a bowl of soup, which Beatrice forced herself to eat despite her churning stomach. As darkness fell, she changed into her most practical dress, a simple brown calico that would not show dirt. She packed a small bag with another dress, undergarments, her few pieces of jewelry that could be sold if needed, and the modest sum of money she had saved from her teaching salary. It was not much, but it would have to be enough. At 11 o'clock, she heard the soft sound of hoofbeats outside. Her window faced the back alley. She eased it open and looked down to see Carter waiting with 2 horses. He had changed into trail clothing, with saddlebags packed and a rifle secured to his saddle. He looked up and nodded. Beatrice tied her bag to a length of rope and lowered it down, then climbed out onto the narrow ledge. Her heart pounded as she found footholds in the wooden siding. She had never done anything like this in her life. Boston ladies did not climb out windows in the dead of night, but she was not a Boston lady anymore. She was something new, something undefined. Carter caught her as she dropped the last few feet, his strong hand steadying her. "You did well," he whispered. "Mount up. We need to cover distance before dawn." She climbed onto the smaller of the 2 horses, a sturdy mare with kind eyes. Carter handed her the reins, then swung onto his own mount, a tall gelding. Without another word, they rode quietly through the back streets of Deeming, heading north into the open desert. The night was clear, stars scattered across the sky like diamonds on black velvet. The moon was waning but still provided enough light to see by. They rode in silence for the first hour, putting distance between themselves and the town. Beatrice had ridden before, but never like this, never with such purpose and urgency. The rhythm of the horse beneath her, the cool night air, the vast emptiness of the land around them, all of it felt surreal. When they were well clear of Deeming, Carter slowed his pace slightly. "How are you holding up?" "I am well, nervous but well." "That is natural. We will ride through the night and rest during the heat of the day tomorrow. The horses need breaks, and so do we. There is a spot I know, a canyon with water and shade. We can rest there safely." They rode on, and as the hours passed, Beatrice found herself relaxing into the journey. There was something freeing about the darkness, the solitude, the feeling of moving toward something unknown rather than something dreaded. Carter rode slightly ahead, guiding them through terrain he clearly knew well. Occasionally, he would point out landmarks, a distinctive rock formation or a dried creek bed, explaining the route they were taking. Dawn began to break as they climbed into rougher country, the flat desert giving way to hills and scattered juniper trees. The sky turned from black to deep blue to pale gold. Beatrice was exhausted, her body aching from hours in the saddle, but she did not complain. This was the price of freedom, and she would pay it gladly. They reached Carter's Canyon mid-morning, a narrow cleft in the rocks with a small spring bubbling up from underground. The water was cool and clear, surrounded by cottonwood trees that provided blessed shade. Carter helped Beatrice dismount, then tended to the horses, removing their saddles and letting them drink and graze. "We will sleep here for a few hours," he said. "Then we keep moving. By tomorrow they will know you are gone." He spread out bedrolls in the shade, a respectful distance apart. Beatrice lay down gratefully, every muscle protesting. She thought she was too anxious to sleep, but exhaustion claimed her almost immediately. She woke to find the sun past its zenith, the heat of the day beginning to wane. Carter was sitting nearby, cleaning his rifle. He looked up when she stirred. "Feel better?" "Yes, surprisingly." She sat up, stretching carefully. "How long did I sleep?" "About 5 hours. I let you rest as long as I dared. We should eat something and then keep moving." He had brought supplies: dried beef, hardtack, coffee. They made a small fire and heated water, and Beatrice found herself ravenously hungry. The food was simple but satisfying. As they ate, Carter unrolled a worn map and showed her their route. "We are here," he pointed. "We will continue west, then north. There is a settlement called Silver Creek, about 4 days' ride. It is small, mostly miners and prospectors. People there do not ask too many questions. We can rest properly there, maybe find you work so we can earn some money." "And after that?" Carter looked at her seriously. "That depends on what you want, Beatrice. We can keep moving if you prefer, head up into Colorado or over to California. Or we can settle somewhere, build a life. But that is a conversation for when we are safe and have time to think clearly." Beatrice nodded. She appreciated that he was not making decisions for her, not assuming control of her life the way her father had. "What about you, Carter? What do you want? You have given up your job, your life to help me. What happens to you in all this?" He was quiet for a moment, rolling up the map. "I have been working ranches since I was 15 years old. It is honest work, but it is not really a life, just existing from one day to the next. Maybe this is my chance for something different too. I do not regret helping you, Beatrice, not for a moment." Their eyes met, and Beatrice felt that strange warmth again, stronger now. There was something growing between them, something she had never experienced before. She had read about love in novels, heard other women speak of it, but had never understood what it truly meant. Now, looking at this man who had risked everything to help her, who asked nothing in return, she began to understand. They rode on through the afternoon and into another night. The landscape changed as they climbed higher, the desert scrub giving way to pine forests and rocky slopes. It was beautiful country, wild and untamed. Beatrice found herself falling in love with it, with the freedom it represented. On the third day, as they rested beside a stream, Carter taught her how to shoot. "You need to know how to protect yourself," he explained, showing her how to hold the pistol, how to aim, how to absorb the recoil. She was a poor shot at first, flinching at the sound, but Carter was patient. By the end of the afternoon, she could hit a tree trunk from 20 paces more often than not. "You are a quick learner," he said with approval. "I have a good teacher." They were standing close, and suddenly the air between them felt charged. Carter reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers gentle. "Beatrice, I need to tell you something. These past few days, riding with you, talking with you, I have felt things I did not expect to feel. I know this is not the time, and I do not want to take advantage of your situation, but I want you to know that helping you has become about more than just doing the right thing. It has become about wanting to be near you, wanting to know you better. Beatrice's breath caught. Carter, I feel it too. I thought perhaps I was imagining it, or that it was just gratitude making me feel this way, but it is more than that. You make me feel safe but also alive. You make me feel like I can be myself, whoever that might be. He cupped her face in his hands, looking at her with an intensity that made her knees weak. I am going to kiss you now, if that is all right. She nodded, unable to speak. His lips met hers, gentle at first, then deepening as she responded. It was nothing like the chaste, perfunctory kisses she had received from Boston suitors. This was real, full of emotion and promise. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. We should keep moving, Carter said reluctantly. But Beatrice, when this is over, when you are safe and free to make your own choices, I want to court you properly. I want to build something with you if you will have me. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I want that too. They reached Silver Creek on the evening of the fourth day, tired and trail-worn but safely away from Deeming. The town was indeed small, a collection of buildings scattered along a creek bed, with a single main street and perhaps 200 residents. Carter found them rooms at a boarding house run by a widow named Mrs. Patterson, who asked no questions when he said they were siblings traveling to visit family in Colorado. Beatrice took the opportunity to bathe and wash her clothes, marveling at the simple luxury of being clean again. That night, she and Carter ate supper together at the boarding house table, along with several miners and a traveling salesman. The conversation was rough but friendly, and Beatrice found she enjoyed the informality of it, so different from Boston dinner parties with their rigid rules and careful conversations. Over the next week, they settled into a routine in Silver Creek. Beatrice found work helping the local doctor, a gruff man named Dr. Morrison, who needed someone to assist with patients and keep his office organized. Carter took work at the livery stable and occasionally hired out as a guide for prospectors heading into the mountains. They saw each other every evening, taking walks along the creek, talking about everything and nothing. One night, nearly 2 weeks after they had fled Deeming, Carter showed Beatrice a telegram he had received through a friend in another town. It was from Boston, offering a reward for information about Beatrice Gardner, missing daughter of prominent businessman. The description was accurate and the reward was substantial. They are looking hard, Carter said quietly. Your father is not giving up. Beatrice felt a chill despite the warm evening. What should we do? We keep moving soon. Silver Creek is getting too comfortable, but first I want to ask you something. He took her hands in his and she saw nervousness in his eyes, an expression she had never seen him wear before. Beatrice, I know we have not known each other long by conventional standards, but I have lived more with you in these past 2 weeks than I did in the previous 10 years. I love you. I want to spend my life with you, protect you, support you in whatever dreams you have. Will you marry me? Not because you have to. Not because anyone is forcing you, but because you choose to. Tears sprang to Beatrice's eyes. This was so different from her father's decree, so different from being told she would marry Cornelius Whitmore. This was being asked, being given a choice, being offered partnership instead of ownership. Yes, Carter. Yes, I will marry you. I love you too. They were married 3 days later by a traveling preacher who came through Silver Creek. It was a simple ceremony, nothing like the elaborate Boston wedding her father had planned. Beatrice wore a new dress she had sewn herself from blue calico. Carter wore his cleanest shirt and actually looked nervous as he said his vows. Mrs. Patterson and Dr. Morrison stood as witnesses, and afterward there was a small celebration at the boarding house with cake and dancing. That night, in the small room they now shared as husband and wife, Carter was gentle and patient with Beatrice, who knew very little about what happened between married people. He took his time, making sure she felt safe and cherished. Afterward, lying in his arms, Beatrice felt a completeness she had never imagined possible. "I never knew it could be like this," she whispered. "Being married, I mean. Being with someone who actually cares about what I think and feel." Carter kissed her forehead. "This is how it should always be. You are my partner, Beatrice, not my possession. We build this life together as equals." They stayed in Silver Creek another 2 weeks, saving money and planning their next move. Carter wanted to head north into Colorado, where they could lose themselves in the mining camps and mountain towns. Beatrice agreed, though part of her wondered if they would ever truly be free of her father's reach. The answer came sooner than expected. One afternoon, as Beatrice was helping Dr. Morrison with a patient, a man came into the office. He was well-dressed, out of place in the rough mining town, and he studied Beatrice with calculating eyes. "Excuse me, miss, but you look remarkably like someone I am searching for, a young woman from Boston who has gone missing. Beatrice Gardner." "You would not happen to know anything about that, would you?" Beatrice's blood ran cold, but she kept her composure. "I am afraid you are mistaken, sir. My name is Beatrice Zander. I am from Kansas originally. Perhaps this missing woman simply resembles me." The man smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "Zander, you say? And would your husband happen to be the cowboy working at the livery stable, the one you arrived with 2 weeks ago?" Dr. Morrison stepped forward, his face stern. "This is a medical office, sir. If you do not have business here, I suggest you leave. Mrs. Zander is my employee, and I will not have you harassing her." The man tipped his hat mockingly. "Of course, doctor, my apologies. I am sure we will speak again soon, Mrs. Zander." He left, and Beatrice sagged against the wall, shaking. Dr. Morrison looked at her with concern. "Is there something you need to tell me, girl?" Beatrice made a decision in that moment. The doctor had been kind to her, and he deserved honesty. She told him everything, the whole story, watching his face carefully for judgment. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "Your father sounds like a tyrant, and arranged marriage is a cruel practice," he said finally. "You did right by running, and Carter Zander is a good man for helping you. But that fellow who was just here, he is a Pinkerton detective. They do not give up easy. You need to leave Silver Creek tonight. But the reward money. You think I need blood money to sleep at night? Go pack your things. I will talk to Carter. You two need to be gone before that detective comes back with the law." They left Silver Creek that night, once again under cover of darkness. This time they headed due north, pushing the horses hard. Carter knew these mountains well, having worked as a guide, and he led them along trails that were barely visible, routes that no one would think to search. They traveled for a week, living rough, sleeping under the stars or in abandoned prospector cabins. It was hard, exhausting work, but Beatrice found she did not mind. She was with Carter, and that made everything bearable. They talked as they rode, sharing stories of their lives, learning each other's dreams and fears. Carter told her about growing up in Texas, about his mother who had loved books and passed that love to him, about his father who had died in a cattle drive accident. Beatrice told him about her lonely childhood in Boston, about her mother who had died when she was young, about feeling like a bird in a cage her entire life. "I will never let anyone cage you again," Carter promised. "You are free now, Beatrice. Free to choose, free to be whoever you want to be." They eventually came to a valley high in the Rockies, a place so remote it did not even have a name. There was a natural meadow with good water, surrounded by forest and protected by steep mountains. A few homesteaders had settled there, building cabins and trying to make a life from the harsh but beautiful land. "What do you think?" Carter asked as they looked down at the valley from a ridge. "We could build a cabin here, start over. No one would find us here, and even if they did, these mountain folk do not take kindly to outsiders causing trouble. We would be safe." Beatrice studied the valley, imagining a life there. It would be hard work, no question. But it would be theirs, built by their own hands, free from her father's control. "Let us do it. Let us build our life here." They spent the rest of that summer and fall constructing a cabin with help from their new neighbors. The mountain folk were friendly once they realized Carter and Beatrice were genuine in their desire to settle and contribute to the community. They taught the couple how to prepare for the harsh mountain winters, how to hunt and preserve food, how to survive in this demanding but rewarding place. Beatrice discovered she had a talent for healing, learning from an older woman named Sarah who served as the valley's midwife and healer. Carter built furniture and worked as a hunter, providing meat for several families in exchange for other goods. It was a barter economy, and they found they needed very little actual money to live. As winter set in, blanketing the valley in snow, Beatrice and Carter settled into their snug cabin. They had stockpiled food, cut wood for the stove, and prepared as best they could. The isolation was absolute, the valley cut off from the outside world for months. But Beatrice did not feel trapped. She felt safe, warm, loved on a cold December night as they sat by the fire, Carter reading aloud from one of the few books they owned. Beatrice realized something. "Carter, I think I might be pregnant." He looked up, eyes wide. "Are you certain?" "Fairly certain. I have missed my courses and I have been feeling ill in the mornings. Sarah says those are the signs." Carter set down the book and crossed to her, pulling her into his arms. "A baby, our baby." "Beatrice, this is wonderful news. Are you happy? I know we have not talked about children yet and things are still so uncertain." "I am beyond happy, I am joyful. Beatrice, you and our child, you are everything I want in this world." The baby was born the following summer, delivered by Sarah with Carter nervously pacing outside the cabin. It was a boy, healthy and strong, with his father's dark hair and his mother's eyes. They named him Thomas, after Carter's father. Holding her son for the first time, Beatrice felt a fierce protectiveness that surprised her with its intensity. This child would never be used as a pawn, never be forced into a life he did not choose. He would grow up free, wild as the mountains around them, loved beyond measure. The years passed peacefully in the valley. They had 2 more children, a daughter they named Rose and another son they called James. The cabin expanded as the family grew, Carter adding rooms and improvements. Beatrice became known as the Valley Healer, her skills growing with experience. Carter served as a guide for the occasional traveler and taught his children to ride, hunt, and respect the land. Thomas grew into a bright, curious boy who loved books as much as his father. Rose was fearless and wild, climbing trees and catching fish with equal enthusiasm. James was quiet and thoughtful, with a gift for working with wood like his father. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Carter and Beatrice rode up to the ridge where they had first seen the valley. The children were staying with Sarah for the day, giving them rare time alone. They sat together, watching the sun set over the mountains, his arm around her shoulders. "Do you ever regret it?" Carter asked quietly. "Running away, giving up your old life, all of this?" Beatrice laughed. "Regret it? Carter, these have been the best 10 years of my life. I wake up every morning grateful that I had the courage to run, grateful that you had the courage to help me. I would not change a single moment, not even the hard parts, the winters, the isolation, the constant work. Not even those, because I chose this life. That is what makes all the difference. I chose you, I chose this valley, I chose our children and our future. For the first time in my life, I am living on my own terms. Carter kissed her then, deep and long. I love you, Beatrice Zander. I loved you from that first night at the dance in Deeming, and I will love you until my last breath. And I love you, Carter. You saved me, but more than that, you saw me. You saw who I really was and helped me become that person fully. They sat together as the stars came out, one by one, talking about the future. Thomas was getting old enough to benefit from more formal education, and they had been discussing sending him to a larger town for schooling. Rose had expressed interest in learning more about healing, wanting to follow in her mother's footsteps. James was content to stay in the valley, already talking about building his own cabin someday. News from the outside world reached them occasionally through travelers. They learned that Cornelius Whitmore had eventually married another woman, who divorced him 2 years later, citing cruelty. Beatrice's father had passed away 5 years after her disappearance, never knowing what had become of his daughter. The Pinkerton detective had searched for another year before giving up, the trail gone too cold to follow. Beatrice felt a complex mixture of emotions learning of her father's death. She had never stopped being his daughter, despite everything, and there was grief mixed with her relief. But she did not regret her choices. Her father had wanted to control her life, to use her as a piece in his business dealings. She had broken free, and that freedom had led her to a life richer than anything he could have imagined for her. As they grew older, Carter's hair turning gray and lines appearing around Beatrice's eyes, they watched their children grow and thrive. Thomas went away to study and returned as a teacher, opening a small school in the valley. Rose married a young man from a neighboring valley and became a renowned midwife, her mother's legacy continuing. James built his cabin on the other side of the meadow and married a girl from the settlement, starting his own family. Grandchildren came, filling the valley with noise and laughter. Carter built swings and carved toys, the stern cowboy of his youth transformed into a doting grandfather. Beatrice taught her grandchildren their letters and how to identify healing herbs, passing on everything she had learned. On a warm summer evening, 30 years after they had first fled Deeming, Carter and Beatrice sat on the porch of their cabin, watching their grandchildren play in the meadow. Their children were nearby, Thomas reading, Rose preparing herbs, James working on a new chair. The valley was alive with the sounds of their extended family. "Did you ever imagine it would be like this?" Beatrice asked, her hand in Carter's. "That night we ran away, did you think we would build all this?" Carter squeezed her hand gently. "I hoped. I did not know how it would turn out, but I hoped. You took a leap of faith, Beatrice, and look what we caught." She leaned her head on his shoulder, comfortable and content. "They expected me to wed a stranger by the end of that week. Instead, I found my true home, my true family, my true self. And it all started because a cowboy had the courage to help me disappear." "No," Carter corrected gently. "It started because you had the courage to ask for help, to choose a different path. I just had the privilege of walking it with you." As the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, Beatrice reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She had left behind wealth, social position, and the security of her father's name. In return, she had gained freedom, love, purpose, and a family built on choice rather than obligation. The telegram that had arrived that Tuesday morning in Deeming so many years ago had seemed like a death sentence. Instead, it had been the catalyst for her rebirth. She had been meant to marry Cornelius Whitmore, to disappear into a life of quiet desperation. Instead, she had disappeared into the wilderness with a cowboy who saw her worth. And together, they had built something far more valuable than any Boston fortune. Their story was not one that would be written in history books or society pages. It was a quiet story, a simple story, but it was theirs. And as Beatrice sat there, surrounded by the family she and Carter had created, watching the light fade over the valley they called home, she knew with absolute certainty that she had made the right choice all those years ago. The mountains stood eternal around them, silent witnesses to a love story born of desperation and courage, nurtured by trust and partnership, and fulfilled in the wild freedom of the American West. Beatrice Gardner, who had once been expected to wed a stranger, had instead found her true partner. Carter Zander, the cowboy who had helped her disappear, had given her not just escape, but a life worth living. And in that remote valley, far from the constraints of society and the reach of those who would control them, they had found something precious and rare: the freedom to love, to choose, and to build a life entirely their own. It was more than either had dared hope for, and it was everything they would ever need.